Welcome to a special episode of Transit Unplugged that we're calling Transit Unplugged Deep Cuts. Hi, I'm Hussey, editor of the podcast, and for this special episode, we bring you Eulois Cleckley. Eulois is the CEO of Miami-Dade County Department of Transportation and Public Works, and in February of last year, he talked with Paul about leadership. Now, it just so happens that we recently had Schneider St. Preux on the podcast, and Schneider works for Eulois as General Superintendent of Bus Operations. Schneider talks about Eulois' leadership, mentorship, and how it's influenced his career trajectory and his own leadership style. So sit back, listen in to Eulois Cleckley on leadership.
Excited to have with us today Eulois Cleckley, who is the Director and CEO of the Miami-Dade Department of Transportation and Public Works. Thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank you, Paul. It's always great to have a conversation with you, especially about this topic called leadership.
Tell us about that. Why is leadership important? You've held a number of leadership roles in our industry.
Leadership is extremely important. One is that strong leadership not only helps to run a efficient, effective, and productive department, but it really helps the individuals that work for that organization to maximize their potential. And what I've found in a variety of different positions that I've held is that if you have a lack of leadership within a specific department, not only impacting that department's ability to be sound and do what's best for the general public, especially from a transportation service standpoint, but you're impacting sometimes generations of employees and their families. If you do not set a culture that really cultivates leadership, and leadership really is about people, and it's about the people you serve. And it's also about the staff that works very hard for you every single day. And so if you're not focused on making sure you're preparing and protecting your staff, and you're leading your staff, and you're setting a sound vision for them, you're really putting a department in a bad position to not be as effective as what it could be. And then for those employees that are highly talented and could go on to do great things, you're suppressing their ability to do so. I found that strong leaders create that culture where everybody feels empowered and they come to work energized and excited, and then they go on to do great things. And so it's extremely important from a general public as well as an individual employee standpoint to make sure that a department and organization really is led by strong leaders.
And you have a few principles you like to focus on, right? You and I were recently at the Florida Public Transportation Association conference, and I asked you to share. I'd like you to kind of run through those with our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is based off of my experience and what I've not only seen and observed from other leaders that I respect throughout the industry, but also what I've had to, I would say, endure and or expect from myself to make sure that I lead my staff appropriately. And I always start off with this acronym called REPS. And I'll talk about the first half of it. It's REPPS, and I'll talk to the R, the E, and the P aspect of REPS. And the first letter in this acronym, R, really is about results. And at the end of the day, the general public, whether you're in transit or, in our case, on the public works side, and then transportation as a whole, your job is to make sure that you are delivering projects, programs, policies, and services that make people's lives better. And so really, at the end of the day, it's about the result, the outcome. What are you doing to ensure that you are being progressive and you're showing improvement? And a lot of times what we end up doing just naturally because of the work on a day-to-day basis is we have to do a lot of activity and the like, but there's a difference between just doing things and progression. And really progression is about improving the current status, making things better, whether it be the assets you're responsible for and making them be in a better condition and state of good repair, the service that you're providing, making sure that that service is one that's efficient and safe for the people that you serve, and that you're measuring those results. At the end of the day, if you focus in on that first, above all, everything that you do should be focused on outcome and results oriented. And if you do that, then not only your staff can have a situation where they're being acknowledged for the results and the positive things that are done, that also kind of rolls up from the leadership standpoint where as the department begins to build a brand that you can deliver results is extremely important. So always focus on results, number one. Number two, and the second letter in the acronym is E, that stands for expectations. And so from my experience, what I've tried to do when I started off in a new leadership role is really spend time listening to the staff and trying to understand where the specific organization was in terms of its performance. But then after doing an evaluation, setting not only aspirational, but achievable vision for that specific organization or department or division. And when you set a vision, that means you set an expectation. And for example, and now in Miami-Dade, our vision that we've created is to be the world's best provider of transportation options. And yes, that's an aspirational goal. It's a very lofty goal, but I truly believe that we can get there. Your mission and the goals and the tactics need to align with trying to meet that vision. So that's an expectation where one, the staff needs to understand that we are here to be high performing individuals, divisions, and departments, but also everybody else that's involved in helping us to meet that vision needs to step up and meet those high level performance expectations. And so when you're trying to be the best and the world's best, you should expect the best out of every single individual that's working for you. So one, setting that high expectation, and then it generates a great vision, and it generates a lot of interest in making sure people come in every day and figure out a way to meet that vision that you set and that expectation to be the world's best. So you should ask yourself, my response to a customer today, road transit, if I'm a bus operator, did I provide that type level of expectation to make sure that that individual knows that we're one of the world's best providers of transportation options? It just trickles and goes throughout the entirety of the department. And so always set expectations and don't be afraid to reach far, because you never know the individuals that's within the department, their ambition. And if you set a very lofty goal, you'll be surprised that they'll end up most times meeting that goal. And the last thing I'll just mention is the P. So it's REP. And that first P in reps is about people. And I've mentioned people throughout our conversation today, but people come really in two forms in terms of what you need to focus in on a leader. One is focus on the people you're here to serve, the customer, the general public. Again, making sure that you're providing those types of services and programs and projects that make sense for them, and you're listening to them. But also making sure that before you start talking about delivering any of those projects, programs, and services, you need to focus on leading your staff. And if you are not figuring out ways to protect and position and provide the proper amount of training, support, and empowerment to your staff, you're not maximizing your job as a leader. So it always starts off with your staff first. And sometimes that's very difficult, especially in public sector life, when a lot of times it's focused on the individual, but always challenge ourselves to figure out ways that we first focus on the staff. And the question I always ask all of my leaders is, who have you identified on your team that is ready to take your job when you go elsewhere? And who and how are you preparing that individual to take your job and do it better than perhaps what you did? And if you're not focusing in that aspect, if you're not building that culture, then you're again suppressing somebody's ambition to do great things within their specific job, division, department, or in the industry. And so I'm very much focused on making sure that I empower the staff, that I act as a coach, and I put people in the right position to maximize their potential. And at the end of the day, if they are doing their best, the department will do their best. And then we'll ultimately end up in a situation where the general public and the people that we serve are really getting in a department that's meeting all of their needs. So that's the first half of reps, our EP. And at some point in time, Paul, we can come back and talk about the second P and the S.
Those are really good thoughts. Eulois, in our positions in public transit or government or wherever we're at, would you tell me one follow-up question is, who defines what results you should be going for in your book?
So I'm very much focused on making sure that we look at data. So a lot of times we do things, or we're just active, and we show numbers in terms of production.
Right. Like a gerbil or a hamster in a wheel spinning around, right? Oh, I did 100 reps today. Yeah. You didn't get it.
Didn't get anywhere, right? And sometimes, again, if you don't set the expectation, you didn't know where you were going to go in the first place, right?
Yes, that's good.
So one aspect that we're focusing on in the department, every place I've been, is one, we want to be a organization that is data driven, and you turn data and numbers into information to help you make sound decisions. And so that's one. And the second, that data is helping you to track your performance. So you want to be in a position where you're tracking everything as much as you can. And then you have the supportive technology or systems to help you pick that performance. So one, data is extremely important to set the baseline. And then you perform some analytics to actually set a goal or a target. And you do that for as much as you can within the entirety of the department. And that should lead into, well, here's how we set our specific goals and expectations moving forward.
Thank you, Eulois Cleckley, for sharing some leadership principles with our listeners around the world.
Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate it. And until next time, I hope everybody has a great day and enjoys this podcast.
Thank you for listening to this special episode of Transit Unplugged Deep Cuts with our guest, Eulois Cleckley, from an interview recorded in February 2023. Don't forget to swing by transitunplugged.com so you can sign up for the newsletter, check out past episodes, watch some Transit Unplugged TV, and so much more. Transit Unplugged is brought to you by Modaxo. At Modaxo, we're passionate about moving the world's people, and at Transit Unplugged, we're passionate about telling those stories. So until next time, ride safe and ride happy.